Hello everyone and welcome to the Gunpla Network. I'm the Spicer and today we'll be taking a look at the monstrous SD NZ999 Neo Zeong as featured in Gundam Unicorn. Of course, this review wouldn't be possible without those fine folks over at Canadian Gundam, your one-stop shop for all your Playamo needs in North America. With $10 flat rate shipping and a private warehouse option, they've got you more than covered. When you're placing your order, think of us and use that promo code Gunpla Network for 10% off. Not only is this kit going to be massive, but the box is just as big. To give you an idea, here is another SD box with the Sengoku Sengetsuden Strike Rouge, and as you can tell with them spinning around here, the Neo Zeong is going to be about 3 to 4 times bigger just in terms of box size, and it would make sense as the Neo Zeong in lore is about 116 meters tall, almost 100 meters taller than the Gramps Gundam. So this is a lot closer to like a warship in size, and you get that vibe from the box. Not only does the size help portray what you're getting, it of course gives you all the normal stuff, the unicorn logo, the name, designation, specification, all that fun stuff, but it gives you artwork that really fits with the Neo Zeong. It's not just here's artwork or here's a picture. It's an upward angle of the Neo Zeong and gives you this really overarching, larger-than-life, menacing vibe, and it really fits for what we get out of the animation. Now on the sides, we have the completed unit and all of its gimmicks and accessories, so you get to see generally what you're getting into, and for something that really equates to just being almost a statue in a lot of ways, it does have a nice amount going on. It isn't just a couple of pieces of plastic put together, it is fairly intricate for what it is. On the other side, we do have a shot of the Unicorn and Banshee in the same frame, which is reminiscent of the artwork on the front. So it gives you an idea generally what we're looking at if you've got those two in your collection already. And then you have a nice picture of the completed unit right there. And now we have Mount Neo Zeong. Many have climbed it and have lived to tell the tale because it's just plastic, but it's undoubtedly a lot of plastic. Starting off with the A-plate featuring mostly parts for the Sinanju and a few beam effects here and there. It's mostly red with some black, white, and that kind of yellowish color. The B-plate with more of the Sinanju's armor parts, once again molded in red. The C-plate molded in gray for the internal bits and the weapons. All of this is pretty much just Sinanju stuff. The D-plate is where we start to really see the Neo Zeong, and you get some of the armor here with that thick skirt armor. And then the E1 and E2 plates are the main part of the Neo Zeong's armor and arm funnels. Mostly, once again, all in red, a darker red though, which is kind of a nice contrast. With the F1 and F2 plates following that in gray for more of the internal bits of the Neo Zeong, which there really aren't many. You have the G plate for more of the internal parts in the bottom of the Neo Zeong, most notably taking up like a fourth of the entire runner. The H plate is made up of the two clear yellow ring effect parts. The SV1 features the stand, and you get a bunch of PC pieces. And oddly enough, not all of them work very well, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. And then you get the manual, which is nice, pretty standard little manual. You get some stickers, and a lot of them as you're going to need to cover the Sinanju in all of its sleeves glory. That's most all the stickers, honestly. And with it completed, it is just as big as you would expect. It is a big old SD. And I'd probably venture to say one of the biggest, if not the biggest SD. It is a really large. And I have to say, it is an absolute unit, but at the same time, it gives me the vibe of those old school Halloween costumes with the fake muscles. Just kind of like, it feels like that. Just part of the SD-ness, I suppose. And I mean, it really towers over everything that's smaller than a master grade, but it looks really goofy at the same time. Largely thanks to those thick SD proportions. I do have a few minor gripes, really. They're not anything huge, and it really boils down to the fact that this is just going to be a statue on your display. I'll tell you why in a minute. But overall, I mean, it is really nice. It is a display piece, and it knows it. It's not going to have a A lot of craziness going on. There's a few moving parts in terms of the Neo Zeong, and of course the Sinanju itself is generally articulated. We'll take a look at that in more detail. It does go a little crazy on some of the gimmicks though. Not all of them work very well, and honestly I'm probably not going to pose them with the vast majority of them just because they're not the most stable things in the world. But the main unit itself is actually rock solid. The main body, the legs, solid, great. The Sinanju fits in there great. It has its own little stand adapter in there, so it really doesn't move around in there a lot. Not that it could, because the armor really encases it in. And once you put it on your shelf, you're good to admire it. You don't really have to worry about it falling apart or falling off a stand or anything like that. It's gonna look good, and it's gonna take up a lot of your shelf. Before we get into the thick of it, let's look at the little guy on the inside. The MSN-06S Sinanju, Full Frontal's custom unit from Gundam Unicorn. This SD is a faithful representation down to the crazy amount of stickers you'll need for those sleeves insignias. While I would recommend painting them, the stickers will work, and honestly for the arms and legs that you're really not going to see if it's in the Neo Zeong armor, you could probably skip those, I'm just saying. Well, the overall build's not that impressive from an engineering standpoint. I do have to say the head stands out. Well, it isn't the most complex, it is simple yet effective. The head itself has a rotation mechanism built in for the mono eye, so that it will follow where the head moves. So if you move the head left, the eye will move left. If you move it right, it will move right. Well, it is easy to kind of get that off center and maybe looking a little strange, and there's not a lot of clearance there for you to really see the eye. It is one of the best mono eye movement gimmicks I've seen in almost any kit. I can see it being difficult to shrink this down to like HG or RG sizes, but honestly, it is probably the best mechanism I've not only built, but messed with. It has a more natural flow to where the eye would go, so you're not having to really fine-tune the adjustment or take the head off or take the head apart to move the mono eye. So it is a nice little bit of additional stuff there. Well, the Sinanju itself, the rest of the body is pretty standard. There are a few seam lines here and there that aren't great. Most notably, I'd say probably the legs and some of the arm, you can see it a little bit. But overall, I mean, it's not terrible. It's something that's passable, and honestly is going to be hidden inside of the Neo Zeong for the most part, so you'll be alright. Now, you'll also get a beam rifle. It's the beam rifle, it looks good, it's done very well. If you want to paint the lens for the camera, you can. It has the attachment, so you can use the grenade launcher or the bazooka, but the bazooka is going to weigh it down a little bit. Speaking of the bazooka, you will also get the bazooka, which has a shrunken mode, and you can use the barrel to plug into the Neo Zeong armor and into the beam rifle, but it looks nice itself, it's okay. I'm not going to use it honestly, but it is nice that it's included, and if you wanted to put the Sinanju out by itself, it is a nice little bonus. The shield, I didn't put any stickers on it. It does come with the stickers, and I put the beam axes on there, and it's nice, honestly. I'm going to paint it, but it's very faithful, it's very well scaled to the model kit itself, and it has a bunch of attachment parts on the inside. So if you really don't like looking at a bunch of hollow plastic, try to position it to where you don't see it, which is kind of problematic for the Neo Zeong as it goes right on the back, so you see the inside of all of that. And you also get one slashing beam saber blade, all in clear yellow. Now, a little bit of paint goes a long way with this. You know, base coat the handle, put some red, looks fine. Honestly, this is another thing. It's nice that it came with, but I don't see myself using it, as it's really not the main attraction for what we're here for. But it is nice it's there, and if you wanted to use it, it is a cool effect. As for the articulation, it's pretty much as you would expect for an SD. Limited, but sufficient. The head will go left and right, which is nice, standard, and that mono eye moves, which is even better. You'll have the shoulders, which will spin around as well. The arms will go out and rotate up at the bicep, as well as that little shoulder armor above it. Then you'll have a little bit of twist at the waist to right and left. The skirt armor is not going to move at all, so that is going to hinder the leg movement. But the leg can go out, kick forward, the foot can go up and down a little bit and rock side to side. So overall it's acceptable, but once again, you're not going to be using a lot of articulation with it in the armor itself. The Neo Zeong gets a wonderful and reasonable SD representation. Something that you can generally afford around 2,000 yen. It's not going to break your wallet, and you can actually fit it on your shelf, which is kind of important for displaying it. Well, the NZ999 is nowhere near as big of its in-universe counterpart, coming in at 116 meters tall. It is still a beast, coming in around 7 to 9 inches, so it is real big on the stand. And even if it's not, it's still a big boy. Probably one of the biggest boys of SD. I might be wrong on that, let me know in the comments down below, but I'm almost positive if it's not the biggest, it's in like the top 3. It does have a lot of surface detail, which is actually really accessible, which is somewhat nice for the SD line, as that's not necessarily super common in some kits. So being able to panel line, wash, and paint is something that's actually nice on this. It's more reminiscent on painting something like a high grade or a master grade and giving you a lot more access to those areas. However, if you decide not to, it's still striking to look at. The left side isn't detailed up, the right side has marginal detailing with some panel lining and just a hair of the chrome paint on the mega particle cannons. But if you remove those front panels, you can see there is a spot to do a nice little wash or at least some panel lining to give you more mechanical detail and help break up the sea of red that is this kit. The build itself wasn't all that intricate, especially for the Neo Zeong portion, as it's mostly just big parts coming together. The shoulders are somewhat more intricate, but they're really not that crazy. The vast majority of your time building this is actually going to be in the Sinanju, which isn't all that bad. It's not a bad build, it's fun and somewhat relaxing. However, I do have to say the arms are probably the weakest point, and I don't mean just the arms at the shoulder, I mean the ones on the back as well, as those just do not want to stay where they are. The sections where the PC joints are supposed to connect don't match up super well. They do hold, but it's something if you move it, you're kind of concerned they're going to fall off, and they have quite a bit, both on the shoulder and on the back. So keep that in mind if you're building this. It is going to be something that you eventually just set and forget. And the nice thing is once you set it down, you don't really have to worry about it succumbing to its own weight. It's not too heavy, most of it's hollow, but moving it or jostling it could potentially knock those out. So just keep that in mind. It's not a deal breaker, it still looks great, it's just not something you're going to take off your shelf and pose a lot or play with. So just a little heads up. Now, the torso, waist, and legs all look good. There's not a lot to really write home about. You do have a lot of mechanical detailing under the skirt, but you're really not going to get in there because you're not going to see it. The legs, quote unquote, or the thruster fuel pod thingies do give you a couple of different spots that you could paint, and if you decide to with white or black, it's going to have a nice contrast against that red, so it adds a little bit more visual interest. But once again, it's really not all that necessary. Now, kind of like I mentioned, this is really going to be a set and forget type kit. It's not something you're going to want to mess with a lot. Not just because the arms are floppy and like to fall off, but the transformation's a little bit of a pain. It's only really 3 parts that come off, but generally, it's not all that great to mess around with. The Sinanju shoulders don't like to play well and end up getting in the way, and the way the mechanism folds over for the Neo Zeong shoulders and arms, it's very specific on how you do it, so you kind of have to get used to it. Honestly, after this review, I'm going to put it on my shelf and probably not touch it again, except for to dust it, so keep that in mind. Not terrible, but you're not going to get this for the movement. All in all, I like it in the same way I like a really impressive statue that I'll never move again. All jokes aside, it is fun, quick, and a mostly straightforward build that, without any detailing, will garner you at least a few hours of enjoyment. If you've decided to paint it, that hard work will pay off and it will make it even more visually stunning to look at than it already is. In general, overall, I give this 7 char clones out of 10. While I did enjoy building it and it does look phenomenal, those arms and the headache of quote-unquote transforming it just kind of makes it a little less great. It's beautiful though, and I cannot say anything otherwise. If you've enjoyed your time with me today, leave a like and tell me your favorite char clone mobile suit in the comments below. Subscribe for more of these dulcet tones that come out of my mouth, and check out our other wonderful reviewers. I've been the Spicer, this has been the Gunpla Network, and as always, keep on building.